We're going to continue to stream the rest of this live at cspan.org. From the steps of the Capitol to inside the House chamber now, up for votes on measures debated earlier today.
2011, together with a section-by-section analysis of the legislation. The American people understand that the economic crisis and the deep recession were not created overnight and will not be solved overnight. The economic security of the middle class has been under attack for decades. That is why I believe we need to do more than just recover from this economic crisis. We need to rebuild the economy the American way, based on balance, fairness, and the same set of rules for everyone from Wall Street to Main Street. We can work together to create the jobs of the future by helping small business entrepreneurs, by investing in education, and by making things the world buys. To create jobs, I am submitting the American Jobs Act of 2011, nearly all of which is made up of the kinds of proposals supported by both Republicans and Democrats, and that the Congress should pass right away to get the economy moving now. The purpose of the American Jobs Act of 2011 is simple: put more people back to work and put more money in the pockets of working Americans, and it will do so without adding a dime to the deficit. First, the American Jobs Act of 2011 provides a tax cut for small businesses to help them hire and expand now, and an additional tax cut to any business that hires or increases wages. In addition, the American Jobs Act of 2011 puts more money in the pockets of working and middle-class Americans by cutting in half the payroll tax that comes out of the paycheck of every worker, saving typical families an average of $1,500 a year. Second, the American Jobs Act of 2011 puts more people back to work, including teachers laid off by state budget cuts, first responders, and veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and construction workers repairing crumbling bridges, roads, and more than 35,000 schools, with projects chosen by need and impact, not earmarks and politics. It will repair and refurbish hundreds of thousands of foreclosed homes and businesses in the communities across the country. Third, the American Jobs Act of 2011 helps out-of-work Americans by extending unemployment benefits to help them support their families while looking for work, and by reforming the system with training programs that build real skills, connect to real jobs, and help the long-term unemployed. It bans employers from discriminating against the unemployed when hiring and provides a new tax credit to employers hiring workers who have been out of a job for over 6 months. And it expands job opportunities for hundreds of thousands of low-income youth and adults through a new Pathways Back to Work fund that supports summer and year-round jobs for youth, innovative new job training programs to connect low-income workers to jobs quickly, and successful programs to encourage employers to bring on disadvantaged workers. Lastly, this legislation is fully paid for. The legislation includes specific offsets to close corporate tax loopholes and ask the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share that more than cover the cost of the job measures. The legislation also increases the deficit reduction target for the Joint Committee by the amount of the cost of the jobs package, and specifies that if the committee reaches that higher target, then their measure would replace and turn off the specific offsets in this legislation. I urge the prompt and favorable consideration of this proposal. Signed, Barack Obama, the White House, September 12, 2011.
Referred to the Committees on the Education and the Workforce, the Committee on Energy and Commerce, the Committee on Financial Services, the Committee of House Administration, the Committee on the Judiciary, the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, the Committee on Rules, the Committee on Science, Space and Technology, the Committee on Small Business, the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, and the Committee on Ways and Means, and ordered printed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, proceedings will resume on motions to suspend the rules previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order: H.R. 2076 by the yeas and nays, H.R. 2633 by the yeas and nays, H.R. 1059 by the yeas and nays. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion from the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2076 as amended, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 121, H.R. 2076, a bill to amend Title 28 United States Code to clarify the statutory authority for the long-standing practice of the Department of Justice of providing investigatory assistance on request of state and local authorities with respect to certain serious violent crimes and for other purposes.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The first recorded vote of the week on a bill that allows the Attorney General or the FBI to help local law enforcement on investigations into certain violent crimes. 2 more votes after this one. Republican presidential candidates are getting together tonight for a debate in Tampa, Florida. We'll have live coverage of the reaction to the event from the campaigns in what's known as the Spin Room. That'll get underway at 10 p.m. Eastern Time over on C-SPAN 2. And then an hour later, we'll have the debate in its entirety on C-SPAN Radio. President Obama is sending his $447 billion jobs plan up to Capitol Hill today. A Congressional Quarterly writes that in a Rose Garden appearance this morning, the president brandished a copy of the measure. The article goes on to say that it was a symbolic departure from the president's approach to many other debates over the past 3 years, in which he generally waited for lawmakers to write legislation, only weighing in late in the process. We spoke with a congressional blogger about what's expected to happen with the bill. Felicia Sonmez, a congressional blogger for The Washington Post. What did House Majority Leader Eric Cantor say about the timetable for considering the president's jobs plan?
Well, the Majority Leader, today was the first time that we really saw him respond here on the Hill in person to the president's proposal, which he outlined at the end of last week. And what House Republicans are saying now is that they are looking forward to seeing this proposal when the president sends it up here later tonight, but they're not able to fully weigh in on it until the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan office here, is able to score what the measure's budgetary impact is going to be. And the White House has estimated that this is about a $447 billion proposal to stimulate the economy and to boost job creation. But until the CBO weighs in on this, we won't know for sure what the real price tag of this will be.
Well, are they saying whether they are planning to consider it as one bill, or are they going to break it up into smaller measures?
Yeah, that's the main question right now. The White House has come out pretty strongly saying that they would like this to be considered as a whole. And you've seen the press secretary, Jay Carney, and other White House officials have said that Congress ought to pass this as a whole. House Republicans don't really seem to be on the same page on that, and Majority Leader Cantor today pointed to a bunch of the aspects of this plan that Republicans are on board with. Some tax relief for small businesses, 3 long pending trade deals with South Korea, Panama, Colombia, several other things that they believe would be an area for bipartisan agreement, but they're not on board with everything. And particularly, as we found out at the end of today, the White House has planned to pay for this with some the elimination of some tax deductions for higher earners, and as well as the closing of some loopholes for oil and gas companies, and some of these measures that Democrats in the White House have brought up before, which Republicans have consistently opposed. So there's a tone of some agreement there, but it's not complete agreement on this just yet.
So if the Republicans oppose what the president is offering, what alternatives do they have to the president's proposal?
Well, the House Republicans have rolled out their own, they call it their no-cost jobs plan, and it's basically a 6-point plan that includes many of the key planks of their party's platform. Their insistence that taxes be not increased, especially for small businesses, the rolling back of some federal regulations, particularly new ones that the Obama administration is proposing, and just measures such as those that would basically decrease the tax burden and also decrease government spending. That's been the party's agenda for certainly this entire Congress and for previous ones as well. The question for House Republicans, though, is are they able to make the case that that will be a successful recipe for job creation in the country? And right now we're sort of seeing that debate play out here on the Hill.
Felicia Sonmez is a congressional blogger for The Washington Post. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
President Obama is taking his jobs plan on the road this week with a stop in Columbus, Ohio tomorrow. And then he's in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina on Wednesday. White House Budget Director Jacob Lew spoke with reporters at today's White House briefing about how the administration could pay for the president's job plan and still achieve deficit reduction.
Let me start by putting the whole pay-for package into perspective. When the President spoke to Congress last week, he said he was going to present the Jobs and Growth Package. It's roughly $450 billion, and that it would be paid for. And today he's sending legislation to Congress that has both the Growth Package agenda and the pay-fors in it. He is presenting a series of specifics, which I will get to in a minute, but he also said that the target for the Joint Committee should be raised. And I know that's caused a little bit of confusion. So I thought I'd start by putting the relationship between the two into perspective and then going through the details. This is a standalone bill. It has the investments in growth and jobs, and it has some provisions that pay for it. By raising the target of the Joint Committee, what we're saying is Congress should pass the jobs bill now with the pay-fors, and when the Joint Committee reaches its decisions later in the fall, it can then either put in new offsets to pay for it, and that would trigger the pay-fors that are in the bill off, or it can do the original target of 1.5, and then the pay-fors that are in the jobs bill will stand. So that's the relationship between the Joint Committee and the bill. The bill is paid for, and whichever path the Joint Committee takes, the jobs piece is paid for. It's a question of whether or not the Joint Committee comes back and essentially replaces these offsets with others. The specific offsets that are in the package are a series of tax provisions. I think they'll be familiar to most of you because they're ideas that we have been talking about for the most part for some time. First, there's a limit on itemized deductions and certain exemptions for individuals who earn over $200,000 and families earning over $250,000. That limitation raises roughly $400 billion over 10 years. There is a provision that would treat carried interest, that's the interest earned by investment fund managers, as ordinary income rather than taxing it at the capital gains rate, and that would raise $18 billion. There are a number of oil and gas provisions which collectively raise $40 billion. That would treat, with the enactment of these provisions, would treat the oil and gas industry like other industries, taking away the special preference. And finally, the corporate jet depreciation rule is changed. Right now, corporate jets are depreciated over 5 years, commercial over 7. It would treat commercial and corporate jets the same at 5 years. That raises 3. In the aggregate, these provisions actually raise $467 billion. It intentionally overachieves because these are based on our estimates internally. When the Congress estimates tax provisions and we estimate tax provisions, they rarely are pinpoint accurate to the same number. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower. And it just built in a cushion so that as we go through the process of having the scoring done on the Hill, we've built in a cushion for the differences that happen. But we do believe we've overachieved, which would leave a bit of excess. That's kind of the kind of package of offsets. I could take questions.
Jack, I wonder on that one point, though, when you say you've overachieved, the very first one you listed was the biggest amount of money, $400 billion, so limiting itemized deductions. I seem to remember in 2009 in the President's first budget, that very provision was in there, and you were saying then, I know you were not OMB chair, but your predecessor were saying that that was going to pay for health care reform. And you had a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, and it went nowhere. So how are you going to get it done now with the Republican House?
I think that the merits of the proposal stand on its own. As the President made clear in the speech last Thursday and as he's spoken to the issue subsequently, we have choices to make. We have, in order to invest in jobs and growth, we're going to have to pay for it, and we're going to have to look at quite a few things that we've looked at before and ask the question, should we do this in order to add to growth and create jobs? We think the American people will think this is the right package, but it's our offer as to what the right way to pay for it is. We think Congress should take it up and pass it.
Doesn't agree, you essentially have $50 billion left for
well,
$450.
We believe Congress should agree. We believe Congress should agree.
But if they don't, you've got no money.
We have policies here that are very real, and again, it's a choice. Do we want to leave, I mean, the way this limitation on itemized deductions works, if you earn $200,000 as an individual or $250,000 as a family, your itemized deductions and exemptions are worth roughly 28%. That's the tax rate. If you're in a higher tax bracket, it's worth 33 or 36%. All this says is that the value of tax deductions above that threshold should be the same as the value at the threshold. And we think it's a fair provision. We think that it's the kind of balanced trade-off that we write. And let me also point out that we are pulling out of the package that we'll present next week the pieces that self-contained are the jobs and growth package and the pay-for. We're going to have a lot more detail a week from today of what the overall deficit reduction package is. We're going to overachieve beyond the Joint Committee target. I mean, what the President has been saying and will continue to say is we need to do the jobs bill and the growth package now, and we need to deal with the fiscal challenges, and frankly, we should do more than the target the Joint Committee has. This is the piece that, taken alone, would do the jobs and growth package in a paid-for way.
What's the rationale for having Congress vote on the set of pay-fors along with the jobs bill, then giving the super committee the option to redo that package?
Well, frankly, the urgency is to act as soon as possible on the jobs and growth package. We don't think that it would be the best course of action, would be the right course of action to just defer everything to the end of the year. We wanted to pull out the provisions that we thought could move most quickly to get action taken so that, as the President has said, Congress can take up the bill and pass it. As far as how we reach the deficit reduction goals, which is what the mandate of the Joint Committee is, there's a little bit more time if they want to go back and do some fine-tuning. So if you think of it as a kind of trigger mechanism, these are in place unless the Joint Committee acts to trigger them off. And it really is a way to try to get action started sooner.
Is there any provision in here where whatever Congress would decide on for these pay-fors, if they were to pass, the super committee would have to make a decision if they were to redo that package that would at least make sure that it was of an equal amount?
The super committee, if the recommendations as we are putting them forward are adopted, will have to hit the target of 1.5 plus the cost of the jobs bill. So if they want to take these provisions and displace them under those rules, they would have to equal it. Obviously, Congress can pass a subsequent law.
Jackie, is it fair to say that given these pay-fors, that the President believes that the wealthiest Americans should pay more in order to pay for his jobs bill?
I think that what this package means is that we want action taken now on the jobs and growth package. It is a challenge to break apart a multi-trillion-dollar deficit reduction package so you can get a piece that stands on its own and moves quickly. This was the attempt to put together a package that can be self-contained and move quickly. I think in terms of looking at the overall balance of shared sacrifice, when you see the package next Monday, you'll see that there's shared sacrifice that's substantially broader than just the wealthiest Americans. I think what the President has said and what this means is that as we're going through the process of dealing with paying for a jobs and growth package and reducing the deficit, that the most fortunate have to be part of that.
But the President's about to embark on a campaign where he's going to blame Republicans in Congress if they don't pass his jobs bill, and he's setting it up, as you pointed out, as a choice. The choice between jobs for Americans or tax cuts for corporate jet owners, for oil and gas companies, and for deductions for the wealthiest Americans. Is that incorrect?
At its most simple level, what the President said on Thursday night stands, and it is just profoundly true. We can't afford everything. We have to make choices. And I think if the American people were asked to make a choice between tax breaks for investment fund managers who get preferential treatment for carried interest, and oil and gas industry tax breaks that treat oil and gas more favorably than other investments, and corporate jets that are treated more favorably than commercial, that is not a hard choice for most Americans if the choice is creating economic growth and jobs or tolerating the results of many years of inequities in the tax code.
How many jobs will be created with this plan?
So we have not put out an official administration estimate. We just don't do official job estimates.
Do you have numbers that
I think that we've seen the same numbers that you've seen that private forecasters have put out. Mark Zandi put out some numbers on Friday. Macroeconomic advisors put out some numbers on Friday. There's a range, but it's millions of jobs. It's a very substantial amount of job growth, whichever of the numbers you look at.
So the Zandi numbers are on target, would you say?
Well, I referred to two numbers that came out in different places. There's a range. I don't remember. I think Zandi said 1.9. Yeah, 1.9, and macroeconomic advisor was a little bit lower. In each case, they kind of demonstrate that there is very significant impact on GDP growth, very significant impact on job growth, and very significant reduction in unemployment, which is why the President's message to Congress is take this bill up and pass it now.
Isn't it easier, though, to sell a plan to the American people if you can say, listen, this bill will create 2 million jobs or 1.5 million? Does it not make it an easier sell?
It's always a challenge with these kinds of projections because they're subject to a lot of things other than just what you're proposing in the package. I think we are very comfortable looking at the estimates that outside experts have done, which very much support the importance of this package as an engine of economic growth in terms of faster GDP growth, in terms of job growth, in terms of bringing down unemployment. And I think that the American people don't want us to be standing here kind of arguing over estimates, but getting the job done to create jobs.
A question about what you're going to propose next week. You say you're going to overachieve the target. I guess you're referring to the 1.2 to 1.5.
Correct.
On this vote, the ayes are 358, the nays are 9. Two-thirds of those being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion by the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Coble, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2633 as amended, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2633, a bill to amend Title 28 United States Code to clarify the time limits for appeals in civil cases to which United States officers or employees are parties.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The House voting now on a measure that clarifies a 60-day timeline for filing an appeal in civil cases when one of the parties is the U.S. government or a federal agency. One more vote after this one. Some live coverage tonight. Republican presidential candidates holding a debate in Tampa, Florida. C-SPAN 2 will be live after the debate from what's called the Spin Room to get reaction from the campaigns. That begins again after the debate at 10 Eastern. And tomorrow, the Joint Congressional Deficit Reduction Committee meets on Capitol Hill. They're going to talk about the history of deficit reduction and what makes the current situation different. We'll have live coverage on C-SPAN 3 tomorrow morning at 10:30 Eastern. And just a reminder that that committee must come up with a plan by November 23rd. Automatic spending cuts will be triggered if Congress fails to act on those recommendations by December 23rd.
On this vote, the ayes are 384, the nays are 0, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion by the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Coble, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1059, on which the ayes and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 123, H.R. 1059. A bill to protect the safety of judges by extending the authority of the Judicial Conference to redact sensitive information contained in their financial disclosure reports and for other purposes.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
the last vote of the day on a bill that would permanently extend the authority for the Judicial Conference to remove sensitive information from the annual financial disclosure reports that judges are required to file. Also possible this week, completion of a bill dealing with charter school programs that is aimed at expanding the number and the use of charter schools. Also, debate and votes on a bill that would prevent the National Labor Relations Board from restricting a company's decision to relocate its operations. The legislation would overturn an NLRB ruling that restricted Boeing Airlines' effort to transfer an assembly line from Washington State to South Carolina. So that's on the agenda this week. Congressional Quarterly reporting that President Obama's new economic plan landed on Capitol Hill late this afternoon. The White House formally proposing a combination of tax cuts and spending increases designed to boost the sagging economy. We spoke with a congressional blogger about what's expected to happen with the bill. Felicia Sonmez, a congressional blogger for The Washington Post. What did House Majority Leader Eric Cantor say about the timetable for considering the president's jobs plan?
Well, the Majority Leader, today was the first time that we really saw him respond here on the Hill in person to the president's proposal, which he outlined at the end of last week. And what House Republicans are saying now is that they are looking forward to seeing this proposal when the president sends it up here later tonight, but they're not able to fully weigh in on it until the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan office here, is able to score what the measure's budgetary impact is going to be. And the White House has estimated that this is about a $447 billion proposal to stimulate the economy and to boost job creation. But until the CBO weighs in on this, we won't know for sure what the real price tag of this will be.
Well, are they saying whether they are planning to consider it as one bill, or are they going to break it up into smaller measures?
Yeah, that's the main question right now. The White House has come out pretty strongly saying that they would like this to be considered as a whole. And you've seen the press secretary, Jay Carney, and other White House officials have said that Congress ought to pass this as a whole. House Republicans don't really seem to be on the same page on that, and Majority Leader Cantor today pointed to a bunch of the aspects of this plan that Republicans are on board with. Some tax relief for small businesses, 3 long pending trade deals with South Korea, Panama, Colombia, several other things that they believe would be an area for bipartisan agreement, but they're not on board with everything. And particularly, as we found out at the end of today, the White House has planned to pay for this with some the elimination of some tax deductions for higher earners, and as well as the closing of some loopholes for oil and gas companies, and some of these measures that Democrats in the White House have brought up before, which Republicans have consistently opposed. So there's a tone of some agreement there, but it's not a complete agreement on this just yet.
So if the Republicans oppose what the president is offering, what alternatives do they have to the president's proposal?
Well, the House Republicans have rolled out their own, they call it their no-cost jobs plan, and it's basically a 6-point plan that includes many of the key planks of their party's platform. Their insistence that taxes be not increased, especially for small businesses, the rolling back of some federal regulations, particularly new ones that the Obama administration is proposing, and just measures such as those that would basically decrease the tax burden and also decrease government spending. That's been the party's agenda for certainly this entire Congress and for previous ones as well. The question for House Republicans, though, is are they able to make the case that that will be a successful recipe for job creation in the country? And right now we're sort of seeing that debate play out here on the Hill.
Felicia Sonmez is a congressional blogger for The Washington Post. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
0, two-thirds of those being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Ready? There you go.
House will be in order. Will the members kindly clear the well? For what purpose does the gentleman from California...
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that it shall be in order at any time without intervention of any point of order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 2887 to provide an extension of surface and air transportation programs and for other purposes. The bill should be considered as read. The bill should be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. And the previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit.
Is there objection?
Thanks.
Without objection, that will be the order. Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives. Sir, on September 8, 2011, pursuant to Section 3307 of Title 40, United States Code, the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure met in open session to consider resolutions to authorize 5 lease prospectuses included in the General Services Administration's FY 2011 Capital Investment and Leasing Program and 1 lease prospectus included in GSA's FY 2012 CILP. Our committee continues to work to cut waste and the cost of federal property and leases. The 6 resolutions approved by the committee will save the taxpayer more than $21 million annually, or more than $210 million over 10 years. These resolutions ensure savings through lower rents, avoidance of holdover penalties, and efficiencies created through consolidation. In addition, the committee has included space utilization requirements in each of the resolutions to ensure agencies find ways to shrink our real property footprint. I have enclosed copies of the resolutions adopted by the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure on September 8, 2011. Signed sincerely, John L. Mica, Member of Congress, Chairman.
Referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
So ordered.
I thank the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today marks the start of National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, and we must renew our efforts to help ensure every American is literate. Today, 93 million American adults function below a high school level of literacy, lacking the most basic skills needed to compete in the 21st century economy. The unemployment crisis falls most heavily here. 14.3% of Americans without a high school diploma are unemployed. Among high school graduates with no additional education, the rate drops to 9.6%. By supporting efforts to expand literacy, we can extend a hand to individuals and families across America. Making sure adults can read to their child or understand printed material at work isn't just good for them, it's essential for competing in the global economy. Learning is a lifelong process. It doesn't stop the day you leave school. So let's renew our efforts to promote adult and family literacy, both for the good of families and for the good of the country. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute. I extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke said last week when he was giving a speech that we didn't really have to worry about inflation, that the long-term inflation problem would not get beyond 2%. So in case Mr. Bernanke or the administration is paying attention, I'd like to read a few facts to them. The price of milk has gone up 38% since last year. The price of sugar is up 20% since last year. The price of corn is up 62% since last year. As of August, beef prices grew 13% or 52 cents a pound since last year, the largest increase in the last 7 years. Gasoline is up 35% from a year ago, 98 cents a gallon. And the projected inflation rate is much, much higher than the administration or the Fed says is going to occur. So I hope that we'll stop these Keynesian policies, these socialistic policies, these big spending policies that are killing the American people. I yield back the balance of my time.
Are there further requests for 1-minute speeches? Is it just this? Chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leaves of absence requested for Mr. Barletta of Pennsylvania for today, Mr. Capuano of Massachusetts for September 12th and 13th, Mr. Holt of New Jersey for today, Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas for today, Mr. Marino of Pennsylvania for today, and Mr. Paulson of Minnesota for today.
Without objection, the requests are granted. For what purposes does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to have my name removed as a co-sponsor of H.R. 1161.
Without objection. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands, Mrs. Christensen, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this evening I'm again pleased to join my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus to talk about jobs for this first hour. And we're really pleased that we're going to be led off this night by our Democratic whip, the Honorable Steny Hoyer, the person who has led us in the Make It in America agenda, for such time as he might consume.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I thank her for her leadership. I want to thank the Congressional Black Caucus, which has raised this issue to a new height of not only visibility, but of hope. Manuel Cleaver, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, told a wonderful story in our caucus the other day. And he said there was a little boy and his dad. And his dad was reading the paper. And the little boy scratched his hand. And as he did so, it obviously hurt. And he went in front of his dad, shaking his hand, shaking his hand. He walked to and from his father, and his father kept reading the paper. And finally, his father put down the paper and said, "Son, I know you scratched your hand, but there's nothing I can do about it." And the little boy looked at his dad and said, "You can say ouch. You can understand the pain that I'm experiencing. You can understand the pain that losing a job is causing me. You can understand the pain of a home that is lost because the mortgage cannot be paid. You can understand the pain of a family living in a home who has seen the value of that most important asset of theirs dwindle and be reduced, so that the mortgage payment they're paying is more than the value of the home in which they live." The Congressional Black Caucus did two things. It said, we hear and we say, ouch. We understand the pain you're experiencing. We feel your pain. But if all we do is empathize and feel pain, that's not enough. Our president addressed us last week, and he said, you know, we can shrug our shoulders and say, look, there's 14 months till the next election. But the people in pain
can't wait 14 months. And that's what the Congressional Black Caucus did. Tens of thousands of people showed up throughout this nation because somebody offered hope. And not just hope, but real deliverables. Jobs were gotten. Interviews were set up. Training sessions for how you apply, how you dress, how you talk to prospective employers. Those kinds of seminars were given. A difference was made by the Congressional Black Caucus traveling throughout this country. And so I rise to thank the leadership and all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. I see Mr. Davis and Ms. Waters on the floor with Donna Christensen, and I thank them for their leadership in particular. Maxine Waters was an extraordinarily strong voice for saying just that. We feel your pain, and it's not just empathy we're going to give you the help that we can give. This president came before us last week and said, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to act. It is time to add to the opportunity for success for putting America back to work, for addressing the mortgage crisis in our country, for putting some more money in the pockets of working men and women in this country, of helping small business grow and expand, making sure as well that we pay for what we buy. Every commission that is met, the Bowles-Simpson Commission and the Domenici-Rivlin Commission said, yes, we have to get a handle on this debt and deficit, of which I'm a strong proponent. But in the short term, we need to grow the economy. Because if you do not grow the economy, you will not get the deficit down. Because you need people working so they can support themselves and their families and, yes, pay taxes, so that their grandchildren will not be deeply in debt. So I stand indebted to the Congressional Black Caucus for continuing to focus like a laser on creating jobs. Mr. Butterfield, another member of the Congressional Black Caucus and leader in our House, a Chief Deputy Whip, is here as well and will be speaking, so that in North Carolina and in America we can create jobs, invest in growing our economy, and yes, to give confidence to every single individual, every family, and yes, every business, small, medium, and large, that this Congress will act responsibly to address a challenge, to address the pain that our people are feeling, and to make sure in the long term, as we did in the 1990s, that our country is on a sound fiscal path, leading to growth in the economy, jobs for our people, and a stronger and healthier America. So I am pleased to join the Congressional Black Caucus, thanking them, congratulating them, and saying that I look forward to working with them, not just today, but today, the next day, tomorrow, and the next week, until such time as our people are no longer in the pain they now experience. And I yield back to my friend for the Virgin Islands.
Thank you, Democratic Whip, and thank you for joining us, and please come back and join us anytime that we're on the floor. And thank you for reminding everyone that the people of this country just cannot wait 14 months to go back to work to take care of their families. At this time, I'd like to yield such time as he might consume to Congressman Davis from Illinois.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me, first of all, thank you, my classmate and Sister Donna Christensen. We got here about the same time, and it seems as though the longer we're here, the more alike we think. And so I want to thank you for your leadership. I also want to commend the Congressional Black Caucus because we have just completed what I will call a very successful tour. A tour where some people were able to actually obtain jobs, where other people were able to renew their faith and hope that out there somewhere waiting for them is a job. As the Minority Whip talked about pain and frustration, it reminded me that there are thousands of people in my congressional district who are experiencing that pain, just as there are millions across the country. I dug out an old record of mine the other day. I was going through my collection, and there was a fellow singing a song about get a job. They say every morning about this time, she brings my breakfast to the bed crying, get a job. He says, when I read the paper, I read it through and through, trying to see if there is any work for me to do, get a job. But he kind of ends by saying it was difficult to get a job that did not exist. It was difficult to get a job that he couldn't find. And so I was pleased a few nights ago when a job plan was articulated and presented. That's a very simple kind of plan, in a sense. I couldn't find much controversy. I couldn't find much that one couldn't buy, no matter which side of the aisle they were on, no matter what their political stripes. I mean, who can argue with rebuilding roads and bridges and highways and giving people the opportunity to just ride on roads that are not bumpy, or to ride on streets that are not filled with potholes? Meaningful kinds of work that anybody can know is an investment and is not any kind of giveaway. Who can argue with unemployed teachers getting an opportunity to work? Who can argue with small businesses being able to receive incentives if they hire people who've been unemployed for more than 6 months? Who can argue with that? I don't think anybody that is serious could argue with any of that. And so jobs must be found, jobs must be had, and I'm pleased to join with my colleagues to say that we must turn around that there are no jobs so that the guy can sing, I got a job. I got a job. Thank you, Congressional Black Caucus.
Thank you, Danny. And this morning I was with the postmasters at their convention, and you know, they're facing some difficulties and having to downsize, and those are some jobs that we know that you and Elijah Cummings, Eleanor Holmes Norton, Ed Towns, and Lacey Clay have been working to protect, and we thank you for that. At this time, I'll yield such time as she might consume to the gentlelady from California, Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Christensen. I'd like to thank you for taking this time out this evening so that we could focus on this issue of jobs. It's extremely important. And I'd like to thank Steny Hoyer for coming to the floor to recognize the work that we're doing to increase job opportunities for people in this country. The Congressional Black Caucus is to be commended. Commended because they heard the cry. They felt the pain of so many people out there who have lost their jobs, who do not know how they're going to pay their mortgages, who do not know how they're going to provide for their families. And so, despite the fact that the Congressional Black Caucus organized and introduced over 40 bills dealing with this issue, the Congressional Black Caucus decided to do something more, recognizing, yes, that we have a public policy responsibility. That's why the 40 bills. But beyond that, what else could we do? And so the Congressional Black Caucus took to the streets and went out into America and hit 5 cities: Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Atlanta, and Miami, and then my city of Los Angeles. And what we saw was mind-boggling. Even though we understood that 16.7 is a huge number for people to be unemployed, we did not realize that thousands upon thousands of people who really were hurting out there, and they came. They came by the thousands in every city that we were in. They were young, they were middle-aged, they were the unemployed, they were people who had been looking for jobs for over a year, and it was awfully painful to see all of these young college graduates who happened to be African American, who went to school, graduated, and looked forward to going to their job, who had no jobs. And so we saw it firsthand. In my own city of Los Angeles, where we organized one of these job fairs, there were over 10,000 people who showed up. Luckily, we had a venue with the Crenshaw Christian Community Center, Christian Center rather, where they had a dome, a faith dome, that could hold 10,000 people, and people didn't have to stand in line. In Atlanta, people got ill standing in line 3-4 hours trying to get connected. The employers are to be commended. They came and they listened, they interviewed, they took applications, they assisted people in learning how to get an opportunity with their companies. And so we would like to thank all of those employers who participated with the Congressional Black Caucus in trying to help connect people with jobs. We have to continue with this push for jobs. The press has done a relatively good job of shining a light on the devastation that's going on in these African American communities. We support all people getting an opportunity for jobs, but we must target our resources to those communities that are most in need. We're talking about rural communities where there's unemployment and poverty, and we're talking about these urban areas. We believe that the resources must be targeted, the attention must be paid, not only to the entire population in this country unemployed, but those areas that are absolutely suffering. We need to continue to do this, and while the white unemployment stayed the same last month, black unemployment increased by a full percentage point to 16.7%. Today in the Wall Street Journal, they noted that black teenage unemployment is bordering on 50%. 50%. These figures don't even take into account the discouraged workers, involuntary part-time workers, and underemployed workers. Moreover, let me just tell you about the wealth gap. Is at its largest levels in more than a generation. The median wealth of white households is 20 times that of black households and 18 times that of Hispanic households, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of newly available government data from 2009. These lopsided wealth ratios are the largest since the government began publishing such data in 1984, and roughly twice the size of the ratios that had prevailed between these 3 groups for the 2 decades prior to the Great Recession that supposedly ended in 2009. The median wealth of white U.S. households in 2009 was $113,149, compared to $5,677 for blacks and $6,325 for Hispanics. The percentage of African Americans with no wealth has increased. About 35% of black households and 31% of Hispanic households had 0 or negative net worth in 2009, compared with 15% of white households. So while unemployment and the housing crisis is impacting everyone, it is hitting minority communities the hardest. That is why we must continue to push. I'm so pleased that the President presented a huge opportunity to focus on job creation, and so now the devil is in the details. It must be targeted. The public policies must take into consideration targeting these efforts so that these resources are put where it's most needed. The Congress must have hearings and markups for the American Jobs Act. We must work together to ensure that its stimulative investments are protected and strengthened through greater targeting. Our entire jobs creation agenda can't simply be the tax cuts alone. We need to focus infrastructure repair in the communities with the bridges, roads, and sewer systems that are most in need. We need to rebuild schools in urban and rural areas that have long been neglected. We want a National Housing Trust Fund to produce, rehabilitate, preserve, and operate rental housing in areas while our homeless veterans and seniors where they are concentrated. We need targeted aid to the unemployed who are the most likely to spend their money and stimulate the economy. If we do not pursue targeted public policy, I predict that the African American unemployment will hit 20%. The American economy will never be stable if we have one segment of our population, particularly a segment as large as the African American population, that faces a systemic jobs crisis. So again, my appreciation and my thanks to our chairman, Emanuel Cleaver, to the entire Congressional Black Caucus for having the courage to step up and make this a priority issue, not only for our caucus, but for this Congress and for this country. We cannot sit idly by in silence and watch what is happening as this devastation is continuing in these communities. And so I will yield back the balance of my time and thank you one more time for allowing us to be here this evening.